Hello, you're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. I'm your host, Michma Bersaha. On News Mongolia today, the President of Mongolia and Russia hold an official meeting. The UN Convention Against Torture has as yet not been fully implemented. Draft law on agriculture under development. For the news, stay tuned. The President of Mongolia, Hurulsukhna, attended the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War in Moscow at the invitation of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. During an official meeting, the two leaders reaffirmed their countries' historically friendly ties and pledged to strengthen cooperation as part of the comprehensive strategic partnership.
At the invitation of President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin, President of Mongolia Hurulsukhna is attending the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. On May 8, 2025, the presidents held an official meeting. At the meeting, on behalf of his state, government and people of Mongolia, the President of Mongolia Hurulsukhna extended his congratulations to the President of Russian Federation Vladimir Putin and the people of the Russian Federation on the historic occasion of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. President Hurulsukh underscored that from the very first days of the Great Patriotic War, Mongolia and its people, under the slogans "Everything for Victory" and "Everything for the Frontline," made tireless and dedicated efforts to provide all-around and unconditional assistance to the Red Army of the Soviet Union, which remains one of the crucial events in the history of friendly relations between Mongolia and Russia. Also, President Hurulsukh noted that a military contingent from the Mongolian Armed Forces is participating in the Victory Day parade. The President of the Russian Federation expressed his gratitude to the President of Mongolia for accepting his invitation and visiting Moscow to attend the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. The Russian President underlined that the government and people of the Russian Federation have always held in high regard and continue to consider of pivotal importance the valuable support and assistance extended by Mongolia and its people to the Soviet Union during the difficult years of the Great Patriotic War. The two heads of state exchanged views on various issues of traditionally friendly relations between the two countries and bilateral cooperation in trade, economy, investment, agriculture, energy, transport and logistics, tourism, environment and humanity. The two presidents expressed mutual commitment to further advancing Mongolia-Russia relations and cooperation based on the principles of comprehensive strategic partnership.
Despite international obligations, Mongolia continues to fall short in the implementation of the UN Convention Against Torture, with only 2 out of over 500 reported cases reaching trial last year, prompting lawmakers and experts to call for urgent legal and systematic reforms, including the creation of an independent investigative body.
Last year, Parliament held a public hearing on issues related to torture. According to the evidence presented during that hearing, over 500 complaints related to torture were submitted to the National Human Rights Commission, which then forwarded them to the relevant law enforcement agencies. Out of those, 300 cases were dismissed, and only 2 cases were brought to trial after investigation. This reflects Mongolia's weak legal enforcement and failure to fulfill its international obligations, prompting calls from both human rights organizations and members of parliament for legal reform.
When we hear the word torture, some people still imagine the 9 traditional forms of torture that occurred in the Manchu era and believe that unless those are present, it's not torture. But in reality, the psychological abuse inflicted intentionally by the state, causing emotional distress and mental instability, also constitutes torture. We can't allow people to orchestrate such acts from behind the scenes and avoid accountability while others carry them out. This is a grave crime, and those who remain involved in these practices must also bear responsibility for them.
We are now introducing revisions to the legal classification of torture. For instance, treating someone in an inhumane or degrading manner will be newly categorized as a criminal offense. This expands the definition beyond just physical torture. These legal amendments introduce not just procedural, but also substantive standards. In this regard, our terminology and classifications must align with international treaties and conventions. In addition to legal reforms, participants in the discussion emphasized the need for systemic changes to improve the implementation of the Convention Against Torture.
We are clearly defining and legislating torture and degrading treatment as separate criminal offenses. The law will also stipulate under what conditions criminal liability should be aggravated or mitigated. These provisions are now being integrated into a legal framework. We have proposed to the government the establishment of an independent body to investigate new types of crimes, including torture. This institution must operate independently. We are discussing and pushing for legislation that will determine exactly how to ensure this independence and what legal frameworks should govern such a body. A working group is currently developing this proposal. Ultimately, it's the government's responsibility to bring forward the legal draft that defines how this new institution will be established.
Finally, international organizations are also calling for complaints related to torture to be reviewed and investigated by an independent and autonomous institution.
Mongolia is drafting a new comprehensive agriculture law aimed at eliminating legal inconsistencies, improving coordination, and boosting productivity in the sector through scientific development.
A new draft law on agriculture is currently being developed. An open consultation was held to present the conceptual framework of the draft law to researchers, scholars, and sector experts, and to gather their feedback. According to the working group in charge of drafting the bill, the proposed legislation aims to eliminate overlaps and gaps among the existing laws governing the sector and to enhance coordination between them. The system itself hasn't been properly established, which means support isn't being effectively provided to develop the sector. Even when support is given, it doesn't directly reach or benefit the sector as intended. That's the problem. So, we are trying to develop a comprehensive umbrella law, one that clearly defines what an agricultural law should be and how it should function to support agricultural production. If we get that right, the other laws will align with it, be updated and improved accordingly. The new law aims to guide the development of agriculture sector based on scientific foundations and to increase productivity. Ultimately, it is intended to improve the social security and livelihoods of people working in the sector. Let's now hear from members of the sub-working group who participated in the consultation.
There's a strong need for the proper use and protection of natural resources, increasing productivity in agricultural production, increasing human resource capacity, introducing scientific and technological advancements, and expanding markets. Government support and involvement in market development are essential. That's why researchers are emphasizing the urgent need to create a legal environment that addresses all these issues.
One key feature of this new draft law is that it addresses agricultural diversification and regionalization in alignment with Mongolia's regional development policy. The public is now being invited to provide feedback on the draft law through the e-parliamentary platform. The bill is expected to be submitted during the current spring session of Parliament.
Here are the currency exchange rates provided by the Mongol Bank. Now, let's bring you international news in partner with major news agencies worldwide. Chinese President Xi Jinping is visiting Moscow as the main guest of Russia's Victory Day celebrations, with the President Vladimir Putin highlighting the wartime brotherhood between the two nations as the foundation for their growing strategic partnership amid rising tensions with the West.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday emphasized that the combat alliance forged between Russia and China during World War II now serves as a foundation for the country's strategic cooperation. Speaking ahead of Victory Day celebrations, Putin met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow, calling China our main guest at the festivities. He noted that Russia and China are strengthening their ties for the benefit of the peoples of both countries and not against anyone. President Xi Jinping arrived in Moscow on Wednesday for a 4-day state visit. The two leaders are expected to discuss a range of bilateral and international issues, including trade, energy cooperation, and collaboration within BRICS, the bloc that now includes several developing nations beyond its original members: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Putin and Xi Jinping have met over 40 times, forging a close personal relationship that underpins their deepening strategic partnership, particularly as both countries face rising tensions with the West. Since the start of Russia's military operation in Ukraine in 2022, China has become a critical economic partner for Moscow. It has refrained from providing weapons, but has offered diplomatic backing, often attributing the conflict to Western threats against Russia. China has also criticized Western sanctions and emerged as a top buyer of Russian oil and gas, helping to stabilize Russia's economy. Russia, in return, has consistently supported Beijing's stance on Taiwan and other sensitive issues. Meanwhile, reports have emerged that some Chinese citizens may be involved in the conflict in Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities recently claimed to have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia and alleged that more than 150 others may be engaged as mercenaries. Beijing has denied any official involvement, stating it has warned its citizens against joining foreign conflicts.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you next week with more news and updates. Have a great weekend.